roles, and I'm also working with a charity called Inspirited Minds, which is a faith-based charity, and looking forward to telling you a little bit more about that today.
Yes, welcome to the show. We've heard a little bit about Inspirited Minds before. We've had somebody come to the show a year or two ago from Inspirited Minds, so welcome back. It's always good to have you here in a different guise. Obviously, it's different people doing different things about Inspirited Minds, so we'll find out a bit more about them. So, in terms of wellness therapy, what is wellness? What is wellness therapy, Andrew?
So wellness is about ourselves. It's about giving ourselves love within 100%. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. It's a number of things. It's not just one thing. Mm-hmm. It's about working on our mind. It's about working on our body, and also working on our spirit. Mm-hmm. So,
would you say that loving yourself is the right thing to do in a spiritual sense?
Most definitely. Mm-hmm. In a spiritual sense, the reason we should love ourselves is God, whoever we believe in, the universe, God, whoever it is, says that for us to move forward and for us to give, we need to give to ourselves first. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you're giving to the higher being as well. Mm-hmm. But with the fact that you're having self-love, you're able to actually create more for everybody else as well as yourself. Mm-hmm. And self-love is very, very important to me, hence the reason why my business is called Self-Love.
Very good.
So yes, I think it's very, very important.
So what do you think of that, Tanveen? The notion of self-love in an Islamic framework, does that work for us?
Of course, I think it certainly does work for us, but I guess I'd frame it a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. I'd frame it a little bit like, well, it's God's love, that God's infinite mercy, and that we kind of in the Muslim community especially, we kind of think in terms of kind of God's mercy on us and forgiveness, and I guess the fact that God understands us as limited human beings, and that we will all make mistakes, but that doesn't mean that we're kind of that we've just give up on ourselves. And so definitely can relate to that
I
message.
think mercy is an integral part of Ramadan, because Ramadan is 30 days and there's 3 segments of Ramadan: the first section, second and third, and mercy is the first, am I right? Or the second? It's the second.
I think.
So we are right now, we're in the period of mercy. Allah's mercy is coming down on us because of the very fact that we are selflessly focusing on our faith and doing the right thing, praying regularly, fasting, giving, charity. Charitable acts don't necessarily have to be in a sense of a financial transaction, do they? Charitable acts can be from ourselves, in terms of our selfless acts towards humanity. Do you think that's part of well-being?
Most definitely. It most definitely is. So when we're giving to others, and it can be anything in terms of giving somebody a smile, just talking to somebody, offering somebody a bottle of water if they need it, feeding somebody, that is really important.
Those random acts of kindness.
Those random acts of kindness, definitely. And it's about paying it forward. So I'm very big on paying it forward. And that's actually the motto of my charity that I have as well.
Okay.
Pay it forward in any way that you can.
Okay. So in terms of your background, Andrew, you've done a lot of work around, you've had a long career in terms of your casework around domestic violence and supporting people in terms of counselling. What kind of things have you drawn on in terms of how you deal with people and how you kind of like instill confidence in them to move forward? How do you go about doing that?
So when I've worked with a number of survivors. I've worked with survivors from many backgrounds. My speciality is BME. That is my speciality, and that's where my heart lies. So when you're working with that particular group, there are differences with working with other groups, and we have to sort of take into consideration that culture is a massive difference, and for them to actually come to you in the first place is a big step, a really big step. So if a woman or a man is actually coming to you, they're coming to you with the faith that they're actually going to be supported. So the first thing that I would be doing is creating a safe environment and listening. Listening is the most important thing, not overstepping the mark, and just being there for them. So, I mean, there's many tools that I've used. I'm trained in many things. And every time I've had team members, the first thing I've always said to them is just be kind. Be kind, listen to them, but also listen to the safeguarding issues that are going on, because that's very important. We don't know what is actually happening all at once. They will only tell us what they want to tell us. And it's about reading in between the lines, but also giving them that safe environment. That's the most important thing. I use many tools, and it could be motivational speaking, it could be coaching, it could be just, how can I help you today? And instilling the confidence so they can actually open up to you.
I think talking is important. We're going to be touching on mental health. I think it's all about coming forward and opening up. This is very vital to be able to be brave enough to not only acknowledge yourself that you have some kind of, I wouldn't call it a problem, you have something that is not quite right. We're very quick to diagnose physical health issues, but when it comes to mental health, we're not so sure about what it is that's going on, and we need some kind of guidance in terms of how we get that support. Tanveen, you do a lot of work in the community, particularly within the NHS as a cognitive behaviour psychotherapist.
Yes.
That's a big term. What's cognitive behaviour? And even before we even answer that one, what is it about people and our cognition? What does that mean? How do you get people to not only come forward to say that they need help, but then what is it that they are needing in terms of support, and where do you step in?
I think it's difficult, like, just as Andrew was saying, that it's, for someone to take a step and seek kind of support kind of for mental health, or other kind of issues that they're kind of experiencing. It's a big step for someone to come to you. And I think the role that we play, as therapists in the NHS, whether it's counsellors or psychotherapists or psychologists, the role that we play is to offer that environment where someone can come and open up. And I think it takes a lot of training, a lot of skills to kind of for a therapist to be able to become experienced in helping people to open up and reveal things that they might not have revealed ever in their lives. So the role of what we do, in terms of CBT, the therapy that I'm trained in is we try to understand a little bit about kind of the way that people's thought process works and the behaviours they engage in, because essentially what we believe is that your thoughts and your behaviours have a really big impact on how you feel emotionally. So the way you perceive events, and whether it's events in your life, or kind of even kind of looking back at your past history, the way that you process that has a really big impact on how you then end up behaving and how you interpret situations going forward. And the work that we do is unpick that. We help people to unpick that, understand their past history, understand the impact that it's had on their present kind of thought process and behaviour, and how that's affecting them emotionally. And then we move on to change process. So how do we then allow people to move from where they are to the next point of where they want to be?
What kind of barriers do you perceive in terms of our community, in terms of a family setting where you do have issues around mental health? There are barriers, there are kind of like stigmas associated with any form of mental health and well-being, and families tend to kind of want to keep that away from the wider public. If they acknowledge that somebody in the member of their family has some kind of mental health and well-being issue, would it not be important to get that person to have the right kind of help, as opposed to putting it to one side or completely not even acknowledging that fact? It just perpetuates the problem.
Of course. And I think personally, I believe that the biggest problem within our community, I'm talking about South Asian community, I'm not sure how this pans out across other BME groups, is this concept of shame. That is the one key factor that I will say over and over again, that this is what is the biggest kind of barrier to people seeking help. This idea of shame, and this idea of shame, I mean, it's so prevalent, that you can't do this, you can't do that. In Bengali community, you've got this thing, it's called shorom, or you can't talk about certain things, and I just feel like this is the biggest barrier. Although there are lots of other barriers as well, because a recent kind of article published in the BMJ Open Access Journal, this was only in May 2019. It talked about the disparity between the prevalence of mental health in BAME groups and the uptake of services. And they found there was actually two different things. So the first thing is, things like shame, personal factors, and environmental factors, like family systems and things like that. And the second thing was actually, not being listened to within the existing services that we have. So feeling like their culture was not dealt with sensitively, discrimination in the NHS. I mean, I know these are quite big words to kind of get out there, things like discrimination, when we know NHS is multicultural, and it works very, very hard on things like, training people up on things like equality and diversity. But unfortunately, it does still happen, and people are still experiencing it. And I think that's why people seek alternatives, and that's what our research at Inspirited Minds has also found, that, a lot of our research focuses on Muslim community, but that involves lots of different cultures, because as we know that, Islamic community has lots of different kind of cultures within it, from the BME community. So we've got black people, we've got kind of people from Asian backgrounds, and, a plethora of cultures, I think.
You're both from ethnic minority communities. Tanveen, you're Bengali Muslim. Andrew, you're Sikh, Punjabi. Do you feel that you're representing our communities effectively, or do you think that we're underrepresented in terms of the role that you fulfill, and the fact that we need more people from BME communities not only becoming professionals, but we also need more people to encourage them to take up careers in these areas? It's all very well becoming a doctor and you're doing medicine, but there are other softer areas of health, such as mental health and well-being, that I think we are underrepresented in.
Definitely.
What do we do about that? I mean, how do we encourage more people to learn more about their well-being and mental health? You don't have to become a practitioner. We mentioned before we came on air, what can we do to counsel ourselves? So any ideas on that, Andrew?
So for me, I would say it's about communicating and sharing it with the wider community. So I've been pretty lucky. I've won quite a few awards for the work that I have done, and everywhere I do go, I actually speak about it. I've experienced it on a personal level as well. So, I mean, not that I've come from a perfect family, but my family, they were very open in ways of talking and speaking. And when I got married, I walked into a family that didn't understand about communication. So it was a double-edged sword for me. And from that experience, it was really important for me to actually share it within the community that I'm in, but also in the wider community. And I've been very lucky in that sense. And I think it's really, really important that we teach our children about communication, and we teach our children that there are other ways and there's other things to do as well, and it's finding those different things to do that. So I run a few workshops, and for me it's really important to do those workshops with teenagers, because it's great that you're doing it with the adults, but if we can get them at a younger age and speak to them at a younger age, that's actually reflecting on a bigger cycle and getting it straight in from the beginning. So it's, to me, I would say definitely communicating and definitely just talking about it. And I'm an advocate. The way I look at it, I'm an advocate. I'm quite lucky that I can go out and speak about it and use my voice. And for me, it's about using my voice, but I also empower other people to use their voice as well.
Do you feel that it's important to have lived experience of any kind of problem set, be it mental health, domestic violence, or whatever? Is it better coming from somebody who's had a lived experience as opposed to somebody who's purely a theorist and has learnt the tricks of the trade and to talk in the way that they come across like they know a thing or two about mental health and well-being? Or is it better that it's kind of user-led in this borough, and I'll signpost information about what's out there in terms of services. We have people who have had lived experience of mental health and well-being, and I think that sometimes they're the best advocates.
Definitely.
They're the ones that can champion that cause a lot more better than you or I.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say you guys, but me, for example. I couldn't champion the cause for mental health because I feel I'm a bit inadequate in that area, whereas somebody who's had ongoing issues, and I've seen individuals who've got mental health diagnoses that are very much part of the fabric of our society. They have lots to contribute, but they have times when they have dips in their mental health, and they will go off the radar, and you won't see much of them. But that's not a negative thing. It should be viewed as something as part and parcel of how a person is and how a person behaves, and we should have allowances for that, should we not?
Most definitely. We should have allowances, and also in what I would say is, in the field that I've worked in, we have something called vicarious trauma. So even when
Say that again.
Vicarious trauma.
Okay.
Trauma by kind of being exposed to people who've gone through trauma.
Right.
Yeah.
So even the professionals that may have not gone through this and may not have experienced this, they're actually maybe living that through their clients. But when they experience that, in my opinion, with workers that I've worked with, it's taken them to the next level as well, and they're coming back and they're ready to work on a greater level. But it's about taking time out for yourself. And I think it's really important, really important, whoever you are, that you take time out for yourself in whatever field that you're working in.
Okay.
Just touching on your point that that you yourself might feel inadequate, in terms of because maybe you haven't had lived experiences or training and things like that in mental health. That there is a lot of research out there that says that mental health occurs on a continuum. So actually everybody has on some level,
Yes.
whether it's to to whatever extent it is. And I think that's kind of, I think it's for us, this thing about shame, that I touched upon earlier. The funny thing is that a lot of people who will advocate, just say, oh, that's shameful, don't do this, are suffering from mental health issues themselves. And if this concept was taken away, then they themselves would be seeking support. And I think it's something to think about, that actually mental health problems affect everybody. I'll give you a little example. Like, so when I was sending out on social media, that okay, this radio show is happening and we're going to talk about mental health, I got lots of feedback, lots of positive feedback, but I got some well done, you're a doctor for mad people, and it's just like, okay, okay. And I'll tell you something about that. It's not coming from a place of wanting to hurt or be kind of have that kind of attitude. I think it's coming from maybe a place of not knowing that actually mental health issues are so vast. Maybe in our minds, and especially in our community, we think a little bit about mental health as in, oh, that kind of person in the loony bin or something like that, but that's not the reality. And I think as we're just developing so much as a community, I think, in terms of becoming aware that actually mental health issues affect everybody on one level or another. And that's where the kind of battling that stigma kind of starts, I think.
I think also, we have a physical health and we have a mental health as well. And people seem to equate with the mental health that straight away, that if you say that you've got an issue, there's something wrong with you. But we are actually, we're all born with it. Yeah. And some of us, can deal with it in a different way. Some of us deal with it in another way. And it's just sort of balancing that out and just saying that, it doesn't matter. Because we all go through this. We definitely all go through this in one point or the other in our lives. And it could be when you're studying at school, you're prepping for exams, something may trigger off there. So it's just little things. But it's exactly about just being mindful of that.
Okay. So in terms of your work around complementary healing, as a complementary healing coach, and you've set up a business called Self Love. Well, is it a business?
It's a business, yeah.
So you've set up a business called Self Love, and I was fortunate enough to see you in action not so long ago, at just around the corner actually from here at the Gurdwara, at the temple, Sikh temple, where you had an open day, and we had a lot of people coming in, It was really nice to see. Did you get a lot of interaction in terms of what you offer?
Yes, I did. So I got very busy. So there's a number of things that I do, but on that particular day, I was giving Reiki sessions, and Reiki is a universal healing, and it's healing that actually comes from the hands, and my hands channel down to where you need healing. I tend to heal your chakras, but also if you have a physical ailment, my hands will straight away go there and heal. So I had quite a few ladies and one or two men that actually came and got some healing from me, and they could feel the heat and they could actually feel the healing taking place. And for some of them it was a complete new experience.
Yeah, I imagine it must have been.
Yeah.
So how do your communities take that in terms of a different approach to, I guess it's an alternative therapy,
Of course,
isn't it?
yes.
We talk about complementary therapies and alternative therapies, and that's something that people who have got mental health issues or any kind of long-term health condition can turn to for a different way of dealing with your problem, a different way of managing your problem. So all these different kind of strategies that you use, are they helpful to people?
Definitely. The first thing that I would say is that you have to have an open mind. Okay, in any sort of healing or any alternative healing, your mind needs to be open to it. You need to know a little bit about it before you actually come along. If you're going to be blocked, it's not going to work, because it has to work with your soul, and it has to be that you're accepting that as well. So I've found that I've actually helped a lot of people who have anxiety.
Okay.
So a lot of my clients that I'm working with at the moment actually have anxiety. I have a few clients that actually do have a few major mental health issues as well. And it part and parcel, you need to actually go for the traditional medication as well. Go and see like a counsellor if that's something that works for you. But this is something that's a little bit extra as well.
Okay.
And I have actually found a lot of results with it.
Okay.
And me myself, I give treatments to myself, and it's helped me as well.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say that it's something that comes hand in hand. And it's not just the Reiki. So if you're looking at the coaching as well, the coaching is something that can take you to the next level as well. But I do that a completely different way. It's not like complete business coaching. It's coaching about what you want for your well-being, and working out what's right for your well-being first, and then we can work on everything else afterwards.
So, and Tanveen, would you say that these types of approaches are useful when it comes to mainstream services? And would mainstream services like to offer those up to potential service users and patients coming through the NHS system? Do you think there's room for looking at other types of self-management techniques, such as, something like mindfulness, for example? I've used mindfulness, and it's very good. It's almost like meditation. It's like when we pray 5 times a day, we're actually meditating. We are connecting to our Creator in a way that there's no other way of connecting to anybody. It's our own personal downtime with our Creator, our Lord, and it is in the spiritual connotation. It is a form of meditation, is it not?
Yes, yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, literally it's worship.
Yeah.
But I think, as you're saying, that it is a connection. And I think, as humans, we need so much to feel connected, and the mindfulness, it has the same kind of idea.
Yeah.
What you're connecting to in mindfulness is the world around you.
Yeah.
And I can certainly, with some of these complementary therapies. Now, the thing with the things like kind of therapies that are offered through NHS, that it's quite stringent in terms of it has to be evidence-based. So, certainly, I mean, I think Reiki is something that's quite up and coming, it's quite new, maybe not new historically, but new kind of coming to the forefront like this, and certainly a lot of other complementary therapies, as people are becoming more and more aware that, they need to take care of themselves, health and well-being is becoming much more important. I think it makes sense that it's more important now, because we're at a stage, economically as a country, where I know there's economic downturn, but generally kind of our quality of life is quite different. We're not, I guess, most of us are not, striving to eat and do kind of fulfill basic needs and things like that. So we can think about, how to look after our well-being in other ways. So certainly in the Western world, I think the focus has, of late been well-being and how to become more healthy and well. But I think with NHS therapies, I mean, there has to be evidence backing it up. And if there's a lot maybe more research done on how Reiki works and the kind of effectiveness, I don't see why, the future doesn't kind of open up to some of these complementary therapies being offered. Mindfulness, itself, it's more recently, maybe over the past 10 years, been kind of adopted within an NHS framework, and that's after
I think
evidence.
that the NHS have taken some of the good aspects from alternative therapies. They do signpost people to get treatments such as acupuncture and things like that. So it has got proven benefits. I just think we need to be able to articulate that we want that from a clinician sometimes. It's not so much, prescribe a medication and then go away and not review the situation, has it improved or not. So there's something called social prescribing now in the NHS, which is being implemented, particularly in this borough. I know of. We have attempted doing something called community prescription, where a GP can signpost a patient who has got a long-term health condition, including mental health, I believe, now, to various community-based organisations that are offering other services such as complementary therapies, exercise classes, and general well-being and recreational activities. So there is value in not only just prescribing people with medication, but giving them an alternative in terms of how to manage their condition and manage their mental health and well-being. So I think that needs to be explored a lot more.
Certainly, yeah. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, can't just medicate people, but I think some of these alternative therapies, like you said, they are being offered, that we are prescribing to it, but whether it's going to be offered within the framework, when people enter the NHS and are able to access it, similar to things like, cognitive behaviour therapy or counselling, I guess that's something that still needs to be maybe be worked on,
So if anybody wants to get any kind of intervention in terms of they've been diagnosed with depression or anxiety, what do they do?
I mean, the first point of kind of call would be to go to your GP. Because usually that's the primary care service in the NHS at the moment, it works on a tiered service. So what happens is that your step one would be going to the GP, getting information on what they're experiencing. If GP thinks that the symptoms are severe enough, they might prescribe some medication, or kind of think about what kind of support you might need, and then you'd be stepped up. Or have a referral done, or you can self-refer to primary care psychology services. So these are things like, you're improving access to psychological therapies, which is kind of something that's developed over the past kind of 10, 15 years. And it's offering people kind of therapy at a much kind of faster rate, than having to wait for like secondary care or, other kind of services. And if your depression or, whatever you're experiencing is very severe, once you've been assessed at what we call step 2 and step 3, and if you're not suitable for that, then you can go on to secondary care services, which is what we call step 4.
Do you feel that GPs are pushing patients to get medication straight away?
I wouldn't be able to comment on that, but from my experience of working in the NHS, GPs are quite good in referring people, to psychology services, especially now that psychology services have developed so much. But I think some of the issues might be, sometimes I think, we were talking a little bit about this, what are the barriers to people, being referred maybe? And sometimes, with BME communities, sometimes the symptoms, they don't come across in the same way that maybe GPs understand it as a psychological issue. So they might, and
why is that?
I think there's maybe barriers with language, there's barriers in terms of understanding culture, understanding how how mental health problems can manifest in different cultures. For example, black men are more likely to kind of be seen as violent or aggressive, or but they might, when they express mental health issues, because of the way that it manifests. And that's not, I don't think it's just a cultural thing. I also think that, certain BME communities have been stifled so much that maybe that's the only way they know how to express themselves, in kind of the way they come across with mental health issues. So I think sometimes this isn't understood, by maybe GPs and doctors, but although there is a lot more training and a lot more kind of awareness around it, but certainly I think with referrals that you might find like a lower rate of kind of ethnic minority people being referred first to psychology services compared to being given medication.
What you do in terms of complementary healing, Andrew, do you think you have something else to offer people?
I think I have something else to offer, but it has to be added with the service that's already available.
Right.
That's really important.
Right.
I wouldn't say that, I'm a specialist in mental health, I'm a specialist in cancer research or anything like that.
Yeah, but we've also said that you've had lived experience. So
so I have.
Sometimes it's better for somebody to approach yourself because you have lived experience and you can empathise. When we say empathise, it's not being sympathetic and saying, I feel really sorry for you. It's about saying that, I understand what you're going through. Sometimes that's what's needed, is somebody who can have a lending ear, but also has travelled that journey to know what it feels like.
Definitely. I mean, people go through all different experiences. So I can, I'm a specialist in the experiences that I've been through. So if somebody was to come to me with fibromyalgia, I'd be able to explain to them that this is what it is and this is what's going to help you. If somebody was to come to me with the mental health issues, I could do that on a professional level and say, this is going to help you and this is what you need for it. The most important thing is, like I've always said, and I'm always advocating, it's about listening and communicating. That's the most important thing. Some people just want someone to have space there so they can speak. And it's very difficult when you're in a professional setting. You only have so much time that you can actually give to a patient or give to a person. And it's also about, I can help them on a level. I can get them to where they need to be, but they need to want to be there as well.
Sure. I just wanted to remind the listeners, we're on Revive FM UK. This is the community health show. We're talking about wellness, therapy, nutrition and mental health. We haven't touched upon nutrition yet, have we? Okay, we're going to do that. So if you'd like to call in, the studio number is 0333 444 0940. If you want to call in and ask any questions to both Andrew and Tanveen, please do so. Also, if you have any kind of thoughts you'd like to share with us, we're happy to hear from you. So do call in. So in terms of Inspirited Minds, Tanveen, why was that set up? Where did that come from? And what exactly is it that Inspirited Minds is set up to do?
So Inspirited Minds, it's a grassroots voluntary organisation that came from the need kind of in the Muslim community and kind of the BME community to kind of bridge the gap, I think, between people people wanting something that takes into account faith. So we know that mental health is helped or hindered by lots of different factors, and I think one of the things that we wanted to kind of tap into is kind of using people's faith, the Islamic faith, to help people kind of deal with kind of mental health issues, as well as use it in a way that we bring awareness to the community that actually mental health and Islam and psychology, they can all kind of tap into each other, and we can use it in that way. And I think the thing about kind of what Inspirited Mind has done, we've done a bit of research around it kind of in the community, and this is, people have expressed a need, like saying that actually the services that are existing right now, they're not meeting those needs. So for example, I did a show on OCD the other day on Islam channel, and some of the questions, that came about were things like, well, I've got OCD, and with OCD it is a fully blown mental health problem, which you need psychological support for. But when you go to the NHS for it, in these particular circumstances, when they went to the NHS, they were told their repetitive behaviour, which was prayer and, doing wudu and things like that, just stop doing it. And I think for someone from a Muslim faith, where prayer and, these are fundamentals of your faith, for someone to say to you, just stop praying, just stop doing wudu, just stop repeating these behaviours, which is actually a part of the OCD treatment, by the way, because what you're doing is you're reducing kind of repetitive, obsessive behaviours and thoughts. I think that will push people away, and it did push this particular person away from seeking support psychologically within an NHS setting.
Okay.
Now, I think what this says is two things. That one, that perhaps there's a need for people to be trained sensitively, in issues that concern faith. Now, faith is something that people, a lot of people do hold very dear to them, and I think we as professionals need to understand that. And I think generally, it's not something that's talked about a lot, especially when and I don't think, from my experience, I don't think Muslims feel comfortable to speak about faith, obviously with kind of more, especially over the past 10, 15, 20 years, when I think there has been a lot, a rise, in anti-Muslim rhetoric, and that's something that we have to acknowledge. It does have an impact on people within the kind of Muslim community. So people talking about their faith, how it impacts on them, what they want to, their values, I think it's something that is, Muslims stifle within themselves a lot of the time. And especially with experiences like this, where someone can be so misunderstood, and not to say that, the professionals themselves were wrong, because they were probably following the protocol for OCD treatment. But I think it's just not understanding the part that prayer plays, in a Muslim's life, and then pushing that person away because from seeking help, because you didn't really understand that part of it. And I think that's what Inspirited Minds, that's what we want to do. We want to offer faith-based psychological services, as well as kind of doing a lot of work, around stigma, stigma of mental health. And we've done loads over the past 5 years. So we've been running for about 5-6 years, and we've kind of developed so much. We've done a lot of community workshops with youth about mental health. We recently did a training for imams in masjids, about domestic violence and understanding mental health. We've got an event coming up, which I'll tell you a little bit about later. But again, it's a lot about kind of tackling, this idea of mental health as a taboo and mental health as shameful. We've developed our research side as well, so we're hoping to do a lot more research in the Muslim community. Okay. And the final thing is we also offer a 3-tiered support system, which is faith-based psychological services. So we have trained counsellors. We are going to offer CBT as well, and they'll be all delivered by Muslim counsellors and therapists. We also have an instant messaging support system that we're developing. So that'll be, you'll be able to kind of work with support workers, in kind of like a direct messaging type of way, to have 20-minute sessions of just support, almost like befriending in a way. And I think this all fits in because sometimes it's not about getting professional support. Sometimes it's about connecting with someone, and I think we spoke about this kind of before the session, before the show as well. That as humans we're social beings, and you find that loneliness is at an all-time high in the UK, and that's quite it's sad. Because we have so many people in the UK, and like we're all busy and bustling about each other, but within that crowd we can feel so alone, and I think we don't actually take the time to connect with people. And our support services are really about helping Muslims to do that. Not just Muslims, because we do we say that it's open to everyone, but it is based on faith and Islamic ethos, and I think that's what makes it quite unique to maybe standard psychological services.
I think a thought to put out there is really people like yourselves can only do so much, because if you're not approached, people can't get the help. So what else is it that we can do as a community to bring forward these issues? Do you think it's important, like Tanveen said, that we ought to have faith leaders and imams being trained up in being comfortable around talking to people around wellness, their health, and their mental health? That's a question that I'd like to ask our audience who are listening in. Do you feel that that's an important thing? Would you rather go to a faith leader or a community leader to disclose something about your personal mental health issues in a family context as opposed to going to a GP? Would you feel that that's a more comfortable environment? We're going to take a break now, so we'll come back and talk more about this. And I also want to talk about young people in terms of mental health. And I know that there's been funding, and where is that best placed? How should we utilise funding for mental health services? Is it really doing anything? Is it having an impact? So we will talk about that. So this is the Community Health Show. Your host Abdul Malik, and we're talking about wellness therapy and mental health. If you'd like to call back after the break and talk to our guests, Anju and Ahluwalia and Tanveen Chowdhury, and they're more than happy to take your calls. So Jazakallah khaira, keep listening in, and we're back after the commercial break.
رقت عيناي شوقا ولطيبة ذرفت عشقا فأتيت إلى حبيبي فاهدأ يا قلب ورفقا صلي على محمد السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله يا رسول الله قلب بالحق تعلق وبغار حراء تألق يبكي يسأل خالقه فأتاه الوحي فأشرق اقرأ اقرأ يا محمد السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله يا رسول الله يا طيبة جئتك صبا لرسول الله محبا بالروضة سكنت روحي وجوار الهادي محمد يا طيبة جئتك صبا لرسول الله محبا بالروضة سكنت روحي وجوار الهادي محمد السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله السلام عليك يا رسول الله السلام عليك يا حبيبي يا نبي الله يا رسول الله is there in the darkness you will never know. So gentle in every breath, like a river that flows. He will light up the sun and reflect upon the moon. From dusk until dawn, He will guide you to the truth. Ya Allahu Rahman, Rahimu Malik, Qudusu Salam. Allahu Rahman, Ya Allahu Rahman, Rahimu Malik, Qudusu Salam. Allahu Rahman. Hold on, keep moving, spread love and peace. Smile and laugh, never cry, 'cause you were born to be free. You crawled, you walked, you ran till the end. And when you fell, He was there, so have trust in Him. I know my purpose, to change the earth, to help the needy and the orphan child, to shine so bright with every step that I take and every word that I say. I want to shout out to the world with love and guide upon my way. Ya Allahu Rahman, Rahimu Malik, Qudusu Salam. Allahu Rahman, Ya Allahu Rahman, Rahimu Malik, Qudusu Salam. Allahu Rahman. Ya Allahu Rahman, Rahimu Malik, Qudusu Salam. Allahu Rahman, Ya Allahu Rahman, Rahimu Malik, Qudusu Salam. Allahu Rahman, Ya Allahu Rahman, Rahimu Malik, Qudusu Salam. Allahu Rahman, Ya Allahu Rahman, Rahimu Malik, Qudusu Salam. Allahu Rahman. Ya Taiba, Ya Taiba, Ya Dawal, Ayana Ishti'na.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome back to the Community Health Show at Revive FM. We're here with a couple of guests, Anju Ahluwalia and Tanveen Chowdhury, both here talking about wellness therapy, nutrition and mental health. We have a question that's been, well, it's actually not a question, it's just a statement that's been dropped in on Facebook Live from Azi Aslam. He said, "We are given this belief that we should lead a perfectly faultless life, and these things, particularly mental health, is seen as something that happens to others, and sometimes it's also seen as a weakness, particularly in the Asian community." Tanveen, what do you think about this?
Yes, I think it's absolutely spot on. You know, that actually especially in the Asian community, there is this, you know, push towards perfectionism, and people have to be, you know, perfect. You can't have a black spot against your name, or, you know, all these things. I think this is something that we need to change, you know, as you know, maybe third generation, fourth generation, you know, kind of Muslims and Asians, you know, in this community. I think it's something we need to kind of challenge a bit, because ultimately nobody's perfect. You know, we're human beings, we all make mistakes, we all have faults. And I think, you know, even if we look at it from an Islamic perspective, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not even expect perfection from us. You know, yes, there's an expectation of put effort in and do the best you can. But, you know, that doesn't mean that, you know, it's got nothing to do with, you know, kind of expecting perfection of yourself, or that, you know, nothing will ever go wrong in your lives. And I think, you know, we have certain trials, and mental health issues, that they are trials and tests that Allah has, you know, graced us with in order to be able to work through it and show the strength of our character. And I think that's something that people forget, you know, people who, you know, do hold such perspectives, you know, that you know, mental health problems are something that are shameful and should be, you know, should be looked down upon, and something to be hidden away. I think these people really need to think, you know, think to themselves that actually we're stopping people from getting the help they need, and we're stopping people from, you know, from living their lives, you know, with something that is not their fault, you know. And I think that's got a lot to do with it as well, like people trying to place blame on people for being, you know, depressed or being anxious or having certain problems without really understanding the depth of the issue. So I think it's, you know, certainly spot on that we are, you know, there is a lot of, you know, emphasis on being perfect. And yeah,
I think we should strive for excellence. I mean, our belief system and our faith, Islam tells us to perfect ourselves continuously, which is incumbent upon us through learning, through knowledge. We need to do a lot more in this month of Ramadan. We are meant to practice our faith, and this is kind of like the training ground, isn't it? Ramadan, the 30 days that we have, is the training period for us for the balance of the year. And we shouldn't just do have this heightened state of consciousness and God consciousness in just this month. We should take what we reap in terms of our efforts and propagate that in the rest of the 11 months. So do you think that Ramadan has a kind of positive effect on us in terms of our mental health and well-being? There's the feel-good factor, that we're doing something that's not only worthwhile to ourselves but worthwhile to others, and what we're doing spiritually and pleasing our Creator. I
think Ramadan certainly does have that feel-good factor, but I think that the thing is, it's almost like, you know, if you think about it, it's thinking about kind of how you look at things. And I think that's what, you know, Ramadan can also be about, like changing perception, changing the way you reflect on yourself. Now, of course, you know, everyone wants to, you know, be the best that they can, but we've all been created different. We all have different abilities, capabilities, and I think that's something we all need to understand. Like, there isn't any prescription, you know, as to what your worship looks like. And I think that's something that we, you know, in a community need to think about as well. There are people out there who are depressed, you know, who can't maybe do the 20 tarawih. And at that point, you know, when they're just trying their best, if they do the 8, okay. If they do, like, if they don't even do it, then I think it's something that we as a community have to kind of, as well, like kind of try to understand that some people are not at the same level as other people, and that's okay. They have their own trials, and, you know.
I've seen a lot of things on social media that's putting out this thing around making fun out of these types of kind of stereotypes, if you like. You know, I think it's really wrong that we are making fun of ourselves at the end of the day. We're making ourselves look, you know, silly by doing that. It's not good. I think there are certain things that people do during this month that shouldn't be desired practices, if you like, but I think to the best of our abilities we should try and do as much as we can. It's important, because I think the reward in this month, anything that you do, the reward is 70-fold. So any one particular act, or any one act of kindness, any one single donation, or any one single prayer is multiplied 70 times. So it's about doing more, not less. And that's more important than to point fingers at, oh, this person didn't manage to do it enough. Everybody's got their personal reasons. Some people cannot simply fast at all, but there's other ways of discharging alms and giving donations and feeding another person to be able to do that, so you don't have to necessarily fast physically, but there's fasting in terms of other ways that we fast, the way that we actually fast in terms of abstinence. What do you think about abstinence, Andrew? What do you believe in terms of abstinence? If we abstain from something that is bad for us,
Yeah. So
that's essentially wellness, isn't it?
of course it is. It is
Because
wellness. So
we're trying to avoid harm.
yeah. So just to comment, like there's something similar that I'm from the Sikh community, but I'm from a specialist Sikh community, which is a Namdari community.
Namdari.
And during the month of September, which is a whole 30 days, we do kind of a similar thing where we're meditating. We're getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning. We're actually going to the Gurdwara. We're meditating, and the reason for that it's to have the connection with God. But it's also to have the inner connection with ourselves as well. And during that month, we have to abstain from certain things as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this is all to do with wellness. It's all to do with being in a meditative state as well. And when you're learning to do that, you're actually learning to connect to yourself as well. And if you can do that, you're actually getting yourself to the next level as well, which I think is really important. It's not for everyone. Everyone can't do it, but that's fine as well. But as long as you're giving in a way that you can give, I think that's very important. So yeah, I think that abstinence is very important, and giving up certain things.
Okay.
It's the way forward. Yeah.
The question that we posed during the break, or before the break, around community and faith leaders taking more of an active role in terms of being advocates out there in terms of their mental health. What kind of things does Inspirited Minds offer those people to be able to be equipped to kind of contend with issues around mental health and feel comfortable around having a dialogue with worshippers, people who are coming into masjids and places of worship? What kind of things are available to them?
So we do training for imams, and we've actually got another one coming up.
Okay.
I'll tell you a little bit about that. So we've got a training coming up, a community leadership and Muslim mental health training that's taking place. It's a free event. Anyone can attend.
Okay.
It's on Saturday, 15th of June, 2019, from 11 to 6:30, and it will take place. It's in Peterborough. So Iqra Academy, Enterprise Way in Peterborough. And the event itself, it's an interactive training session for
imams. Is that
imams.
a national event for everybody, or is that particularly that area?
No, that's for anybody. Anybody can attend it, yeah. So it's for community leaders, mosque committee members, chaplains, imams, and really it is in response to the demand from the Muslim community to have their leaders kind of address some of the issues that we see. There is a demand, people do want imams and, people who are leaders, community leaders to talk about mental health, to talk about domestic abuse, to talk about all the societal issues that we face, to talk about Islamophobia and, the things that we, are facing currently, in terms of, backlash from kind of racists and bigots and things like that. So I think people want to see community leaders talking about some of these events, and I think that's what we try to do: help train people up, help them, make them aware of the issues that are are happening in the community and what the community wants from them. And I think alhamdulillah, the imams, they have been receptive. The people that we've spoken to, they have found the trainings that we offer beneficial, and all of our training, it's backed up by research. So, we do research in the community, find out what people want, and then try to, develop training packages for that. And it's something we want to continue doing, not just for just imams and community leaders, but also, things like, equality, diversity training and things like that in the NHS. So understanding more about BME communities than the Muslim communities, who might seek, psychological support. So we do, and we want to take it globally as well. So we don't just want it to be in the UK, but, have a global impact in terms of, allowing people to find out more about mental health and tackling stigma, on a global level. So I think we've got big dreams and aspirations in terms of what we want to do, but right now these are the things that we are doing.
And I think it's really important. I mean, going back about 5-6 years ago, I attended a training. I actually helped deliver the training as well, and there was lots of community leaders there, not just from the Muslim background but from different backgrounds as well. And the actual impact of it was really amazing, that they were actually helping people within their communities, and they felt a lot more confident to do that, and people were coming up to them. And it's definitely, training is definitely the way forward.
Okay. Now, one of the other things is young people and how they can access mental health services. When we had Hasina on the show 2 weeks ago, we were talking about a really hard subject, which is to do with dying matters and bereavement and preparing for our death, end of life care. And she said to me, I've just come back from an Instagram course. I'm trying to attract more young people in terms of understanding the whole area of this field that I'm in. And I think there is a need for us to address mental health with young people. Because like you mentioned, Islamophobia, people are experiencing unnecessary fears and concerns, anxieties, all this agenda around radicalization. How do we contend in terms of our feelings and emotions when we see things on social media, on social media and the news, and that has an effect on us. I think that mental health support is vital for young people in terms of making themselves understand that emotions are natural, but it's what you do with them, how you channel those emotions that is important, as opposed to getting aggressive and radicalized. And I know that the parliamentary green paper suggested that there was around about £300 million at the disposal of the government to put towards schools in effectively using that money to support schools in terms of supporting young people. And we've got Prevent, for example, which is a strategy that the government are using to kind of intervene and talk to young people or get feedback on what's happening out there. The NHS has got a long-term plan and in place for mental health support. Where is the support, and how easy is it for young people to kind of tap into services or go to their teacher, go to their mentor or whoever? That's a gap that we are not necessarily addressing in the community. So how do we go about dealing with this whole area?
It's a really sensitive kind of issue, I think. And you mentioned Prevent, and they haven't really done much in terms of, I guess, creating an open dialogue. And I think, I'm sure, if they're improving, or if they're, whatever they're, developing in terms of their strategy next. But historically, from what I'm aware of, I don't think young people, think very well of them, and they might even not express things, as because of kind of some of these strategies, I think, which need to be reviewed in my opinion. And I think what we need to have safe dialogues, and have safe environments for I think people, kids, young people, youth, to have these dialogues without feeling like they're going to be reported or they're going to, have some kind of like major impact. These dialogues need to happen. Now, whether they happen, in the masjid or, at schools or wherever, I think it's just, that's where we need to channel, a lot of kind of resources, allowing people to talk and have these dialogues and express opinions. And I don't think, I don't believe in like, a system that kind of stifles people from expressing opinions. And because that's how you get them out, and that's how you learn, from other people. And I feel like some of the strategies in place at the moment, they're not really allowing people to have that space. There's a lot of fear-mongering that takes place, whether it's from, the representation of Muslims in the media or the strategies that the governments have placed. For example, there was, I think there was recently kind of that debate on whether Islamophobia should be defined, whether there should be a definition. And I think, it's really, and I think it was a chief commissioner of the police who was like, well, saying to Theresa May that, you know, it shouldn't, that there should be no official, don't quote me on this, but there shouldn't be, the definition that was proposed, it shouldn't be taken on board because it would stop the police from, from stopping and searching or from, carrying out, whatever checks they need to. And I don't think that's 100% true. I think, the reason that a definition was needed at that point is because there has been a lot of anti-Muslim crime. There needs to be some way for Muslims to be able to say, yes, this happened, my hijab was pulled off, and that is a racist attack, and that something needs to happen to that person, whereas at the moment there are no laws to protect that person for racially aggravated, Islamophobically aggravated assaults. And I think in this kind of climate, you're not going to get an open dialogue. You're not going to get people, youth, coming and saying, yes, these things happen to me, because what they're learning is nothing happens. Your needs are not going to be met. And what's going to happen more likely is if you ask for a prayer space, or if you ask for some way to express your faith, then you might get reported to Prevent, or you get picked up as that radicalized child just because they want to express their faith. And I find it really kind of disturbing that in the UK, which has these values of freedoms and democracy and everybody matters, human rights and all these things, and your faith is a protected thing, I just find it quite difficult to for that doesn't sit well with me, being someone who's born and brought up in the UK and had been afforded all of these these great things and luxuries, I think, in a way.
My question is, what type of environment do we need for our youngsters to come and share those frustrations and feelings in a safe space? Should some of this funding come to us? Should some of these funding be available to us, to institutions like this, to best use it? And obviously there should be allowances for scrutinising it, to come in and check that everything's okay, and this is not a hotbed for terrorism. So we should be able to be proactive as a society, as a Islamic community, to say, look, we understand these levers and drivers in the community that's leading to unnecessary concerns, but we want to take a positive step to deal with it. And it's our future generations that we're concerned about, and we're concerned about their mental health. Because if you pinpoint somebody and you say that they're potentially a terrorist suspect, what is it that's led to that in the run-up to that? It's because when it's when the boot is on the other foot, it's somebody that's perpetrated an act of terrorism, but they had a mental health problem. When we've had attacks on mosques, when we've had attacks on Muslim people, and I include Sikh people as well, because they've been misinterpreted as Muslim, so they've been attacked unnecessarily, and the person that's the perpetrator invariably is dubbed, this person had a mental health problem. So mental health is intrinsic in all of this, so we should have that opportunity to say to people, look, if anybody's going to get radicalised, red, white, green or blue, whoever they may be, it stems from an imbalance in their mental health and well-being, surely. What do you say about that?
So what I say about that is currently at the Gurdwara that we're at, we're actually putting programmes on for youth to actually be able to speak. So we're doing programs, we're inviting all youth. I think it's really important to do that as a community, just to invite all youth so they have a safe space to talk. And sometimes you can't do that in the traditional way of doing that. And it has to be somewhere different. And it has to be somewhere where they're not being judged as well. Obviously, we need to look at the safeguarding of everything. But it needs to be a space where they can come and speak, they can come and do what they need to do. So what we're actually now putting on is events for them to come and attend. If they want to, if there's something they want to do, so they may enjoy photography or they may enjoy something, helping them with that. It's about bringing their balance up, and that's going to help their mental health as well. And they're not going to feel confined. So, like I said, I'm from the Namtali community, so we wear the white turbans, and they're the round turbans, and there's a lot of people that do, within our community get mistaken for Muslims, and they actually, get a lot of criticism for that as well. And they've been through that point where they have been have been accused of certain things, and it's affected them. So this is why we're actually getting at that point where we need to work with the youth, but we need to work with the youth on their level. That's the most important thing that we have to do. We have to understand we can't tell them what to do, but we can show them. Yeah. And for me, that's really important, that we need to work with the youth.
It's important, I think, like, you know, just like you said, to kind of be on their level and understand their experiences, you know, and that's where I guess, you know, a lot of research comes in, you know, like kind of actually talking to youth and getting to know what they're experiencing, you know, kind of day to day. Maybe that's where some of the funding should go, you know, all this funding that's available, and I think certainly I think community.
Do you find as Inspirited Minds there's a problem in terms of accessing certain types of funding that you would like to do, which is more evidence-based, more research-focused, and can potentially allow for more innovative services to be created? Because surely there's a need for it. I mean, I think you should have like focus groups for young people to come in and disclose what they're feeling and thinking, as opposed to a prevent strategy. I think that would buy in a lot more.
I agree
and
with you.
Then you can film it, you could record it, and you can use it as a kind of like a dialogue and a discussion that's kind of shared, and then you can put that forward as a best practice, and it can be implemented in all parts of the country. I mean, it's nothing like trying something different that brings about some kind of, you know, spin-off in terms of a benefit that's worth pursuing and worth funding. So I think there's opportunities for mosques, gurdwaras, and all different types of settings to kind of work on this, and I think it should be a collaborative thing. It should be a multi-faith thing. Sometimes there's value in doing things. We've had iftars here. We've had iftars in the whole of the community, bringing communities together.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we ought to do, is to show that we want to embrace the community. We are part and parcel of it, and our youth are no different from other youth. So it's important to discuss things around this. Anything else about Inspirited Minds that you feel is worth mentioning in terms of what services you're offering, particularly around cognitive behaviour therapy?
Yeah, so we do, you know, in terms of the services we offer, you know, as I was talking, you know, about before, we do offer a 3-tier kind of support service. So the first part of that is kind of information on our website. So please do have a look on our website. It's what is it? Well, just type in Inspirited Minds and you find it. We're also fundraising at the moment for the charity to be able to offer more funded counselling and CBT sessions, because we do offer funding for people who are of a low income or, you know, don't meet certain threshold. So we offer funded sessions. You know, I think it's up to 6 sessions initially, and then up to 12 sessions if necessary. But so that's the service that we offer, and that's from qualified counsellors and soon to be kind of cognitive behaviour psychotherapy as well. So we are kind of expanding the support that we offer. We also have a second tier kind of support system where you can you'll be allocated to a support worker and be able to kind of connect with them through direct instant messaging, which is something we're kind of working on at the moment and should be launched fairly soon after Ramadan. So we are, like, you know, in terms of the support we offer, like we are, you know, we've got something set up, and it's a good setup, and, you know, if people do feel like, you know, they are experiencing mental health problems, or you know, even just want to connect with someone, you know, to help support them through difficult issues, then we're here, and you can contact us, and we will try our best to help you.
Because it's been Mental Health Awareness Week, the kind of big TV platforms are doing themed programs as we see in terms of mental health. There was one particular program that I've been particularly quite keenly watching, is particular key celebrities in the community have been doing these programs, and you know, talking about their personal journeys in terms of their depression, anxiety. One person in particular, Nadia, who's the TV personality who recently won the what was it?
Great British Bake Off.
Great British Bake Off. Yeah. So she actually was quite very, very open in terms of her experiences of anxiety and how debilitating it was for her, and for her to be somebody that's come out from, obscurity into the public eye, very much into the public eye, and having to contend with all of those things that she has in terms of she has OCD, she has a real fear of travelling and things like that. And it was quite revealing in terms of how somebody who's now become quite a media personality is still overcoming a lot of these things. Do you think it's important for famous faces to be our role models, if you like? Do you think it's important? Andrew, do you think famous people should be good role models?
I think they should, definitely.
Because you have a someone who's quite famous, I think now, who's a good role model. So do you think it's an important thing?
It's definitely important, because when we're looking at it, youth are actually looking up to these famous people, and it's not just the youth, adults are as well. And at the end of the day, they're human.
We have a caller.
Okay.
Press the button.
Hello, sorry.
Press it again. Put it down.
Okay.
You will get a call now.
Okay. So I think we've got a caller coming in. So so young people are important.
Most definitely. It's definitely important for young people to have someone to look up to, but also if they can, that celebrity can
We
say
have a
that.
caller actually, so let me... Hello, assalamu alaikum, caller.
Hello, alaikum salam.
Who am I speaking to? You've
My
called
name-
into the community health
My name's
show.
my name's Azzy Aslam. I put
Assalamu alaikum.
a question on the Walaikum salam.
Yes, what's your question, Azzy? Thanks for calling in.
The question I've got is we've talked about mental health in general terms across the the Asian community.
Yeah.
I'm curious to find out what kind of group I'm sure it happens across the board, but what's the most prevalent of mental health sort of things that are coming out? What are the what are we actually facing in a large proportion, and across what age group would it is it coming through?
Okay, who would like to answer that question?
I don't mind trying to answer
Okay.
that. So you're asking what type of mental health problems are occurring more or most?
Yeah. What are you finding when people come to you with mental health challenges? What is it? You talked about OCD, one example. In the large proportion, what are you seeing when people come to you saying they've got some mental health issues?
Specifically in the kind of South Asian community, the types of mental health problems that I would say are most prevalent are low self-esteem, and that can have lots of other things attached to it, like anxiety and depression, but certainly low self-esteem comes across. One way that manifests is a lack of assertiveness, and I can certainly see how that fits in with kind of a lot of the experiences, I guess, of people in South Asian community, and the parenting that maybe has contributed to that, as well as other factors, like environmental factors, stresses, things like that South Asian community might have gone through. So yeah, definitely kind of those types of things have been most prevalent. One thing I've noticed a lot as well is post-traumatic stress disorder. That's I've had a lot of people come through for that, and I think a lot of the time we don't in our community we don't talk about that. Talk about trauma and the impact, the kind of types of things that impact upon us as a community, to leave individuals traumatized. So that's something that I certainly see a lot of. And I think it's something that we need to talk about a lot more as well. So things like neglect, physical abuse, sexual abuse, things like that, all those things need to really be spoken about, I think, in our community, because they're not touched upon enough. And it leaves people traumatized, not once, but 2 or 3 times, because not only do you go through the event, but then you get told you're not allowed to talk about it. So that's someone telling you what happened to you, it doesn't matter. And then the third time is then the community, if they find out about it, and then you're again, now you're the black sheep, you're not going to get married, nothing's going to happen, good's going to happen for you, you're looked down upon. And I think this is a really dangerous and disturbing kind of dynamic to be in. So yeah, just to answer your question, that's what I would say I found affects us the most.
Okay, does that answer your call, Asi?
Sorry.
Does that answer your call?
It does. I mean, the other part of it was I was trying to understand which age group. I mean, is there a particular age group that you're seeing more than others?
I think certainly we see more like third generation kind of age group coming in. So things like middle aged and not too much above that. So we don't see a lot of people from our community who maybe are above like 50 or 60 coming in. And I feel like that's got a lot to do with. It's kind of mental health is something quite new that we're understanding in a new kind of way. So I think generally people above 50, I would say, even if they do come in, I don't think success rates are very good because of things like communication and kind of language barriers and kind of other factors. And sometimes it's just some habits and some kind of ways of thinking. It's quite difficult to unpick it past a certain age, especially if there are a lot of other barriers, like I said, the language barriers and cultural barriers that get in the way.
Thank you for your call, Asi. I appreciate your input. So we're going to take another call, actually. So let's see. We may have another call coming in. So it's an important point that he made around who is it that we have to tackle in terms of communities and different people from different kind of age profiles, isn't it? What do you think around that?
Yes, I think so. I think it's again one of the things that maybe we as in Spirited Mind would really like to do, try to open up.
We've got another call.
Dialogue.
Hello, caller. Hello. I think they've just cut off. We seem to be getting a spate of callers now, so we can one call after the other. Okay, let's see. Hello, caller. Hello. No, it's call's gone off. Okay. So young people need to be supported in a particular way, and we were talking about social media. Why is it ever so important to use different approaches around social media to tackle, connecting with young people?
So what I would be saying with that is young people, the way they're communicating now is social media. When we were growing up, we didn't know what social media was. Now it's like part and parcel. Before you do anything, everything is via social media. So if you're able to communicate to them, you're going to reach them. And it has to be in a particular way. It definitely has to be in a particular way. They respond more to social media.
Okay, I think we've got another caller coming through. Let's see if I can take this call. Hello, caller? We seem to be disconnecting the calls for some reason. Okay. Somebody's calling in again. Hello, caller. Hello? I don't know what's going on. Anyway, we'll carry on talking. The other thing was around Grenfell. There's been a lot of ongoing issues around Grenfell in terms of, why is it that we still have a problem with trauma, and there's been a long-going issue around bereavement as well. So we need more people to go in as counsellors and support families, and I don't know why the government hasn't supported it. The NHS have been going in to support people, but it's been very ineffective. Inspirited Minds did support the whole victims around and the tragedy around Grenfell. It's still an ongoing mess, isn't it? What is it that we can do in terms of community to support these people?
I think when Grenfell happened, it was an absolute disaster, and I think that, you know, the kind of magnitude of that event and the fact that, you know, it was allowed to take place, and, you know, precautions and things like, I mean, there's a lot of people to blame, I think, for something like that happening. And I think you will have people traumatized, and not just traumatized, but disillusioned by the government and by their kind of very worth, you know, in this kind of multicultural community, I think. So why, you know, your question is kind of why is it still going on? It's just because it was such a big deal, you know, that people will continue to be, you know, traumatized by it, and have been really kind of impacted upon. And, you know, I don't know too much about what resources have been set aside, or whether enough has been done, but as far as I was aware, you know, there's still people waiting to be rehoused. And I think that's appalling. I think, you know, to have to go through that, possibly have lost family members.
Coming in, but it's not connecting. Okay.
And then not to be rehoused and still be living in a hotel or a hostel, or, you know, whatever they've been accommodated, you know, through. I think that's just it's going to keep the problem going for sure. You're not allowing people to heal.
Okay. Yeah, it's very depressing. I mean, we're almost coming up to 2 years now, and this is a community that's just been left. You know, I think we've got a caller coming in. Hello, caller.
Hello, assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Who am I speaking to?
You. It's Olivia. You're speaking to Olivia.
Welcome to the show. What would you like to ask?
Okay, it was a tough one to get through. I kept getting cut off.
I'm sorry.
Fantastic what everybody's talking about.
Okay.
It's relating to me and the whole community, definitely. Absolutely brilliant. I think Andrew just recently said something about community leaders and imams and someone like that we need in the community. Definitely, that's something, you know, I myself can't fight for alone. Young children, adults, middle-aged people like myself, you know, we need to go somewhere to be able to voice our views and not be judged on it. Obviously, when I've seen documentaries before about this Orthodox, what do you call them? Someone went to them regarding some matter, and they were being very judgmental and things like that. This does happen in these cultures. We definitely need a breakthrough. We need, I think, is it Tanveen who's on the panel as well?
Tanveen.
Someone like Tanveen, if she can, I don't know, the Islamic mosque is such a huge mosque in our community. If they can make a psychotherapy take a room, and I don't know, have people, young children, be able to go up there and chat about anything what was going through their minds. You know, or someone like Tameen, being there, I swear it would have been so busy, and if something like that can happen, that'd be great. But
so what you're
anyway,
asking for is a space that any potential mosque, such as ours here, or
in the faith area, because
offer.
We do focus on faith a lot as well, and you know, we kind of think, is this allowed in my faith, or is that, you know, what does my faith say about this, or you know, we do think about faith a lot, and there's nowhere to go to get that connection and the answers that we're looking for.
I think this is something we touched on a bit earlier. Yeah, you're right, Olivia. I think we need a safe space for our youngsters to come and talk and express things. And you know, it's actually a preventative approach, isn't it? The idea that you've come up with is I'm sure other people are thinking it, but not necessarily saying it.
Yes, of course they are.
So we need that. We need that dialogue with people. We need to have an open door policy, and mosques and other
it's like a drop-in policy,
spaces should have an open door policy. If it feels too uncomfortable to come into a mosque, then we should be able to use a community space. And I think certain places of worship are geared up now and have got areas where there's a designated space like a community hall or a kitchen or something like that we can utilize that space. and have these dialogues, have these open forums. I agree with you, and thank you for calling in. I appreciate your input. So we need to explore. We need to explore that a lot further. So thanks a lot for your call, Olive. Appreciate that.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
So I think we're getting people thinking around this a lot more. We should have more discussion around things like this and talk about mental health in a natural way, in an organic way, not necessarily in a way that it's something negative, the negative connotation. We should try to dispel the negativity around mental health and make it more acceptable. And the only way you could do that is talking to your fellow neighbour, to your brother, to your sister. A mother should be talking to their son or daughter. A dad should be talking to their son or daughter. How are you feeling today? You seem upset. What is it? We need to have that as a part of our daily kind of way of connecting with our loved ones. But I think what there tends to be this issue around a generation gap. Our older generation are far too removed from anything that's happening with youngsters. I mean, just looking at some of the programs that are out on TV in terms of social media, the amount of pressure there is on youngsters to act and behave and look in a certain way. It's an enormous amount of pressure, isn't it? And that's affecting people's mental health.
Certainly, I think there's like a really big kind of cognitive dissonance in a way, like in terms of, for example, like, what you think you should be doing, and what's kind of expected of you. So for example, like kind of your beliefs, like for example, Muslim girls, for example, I know a lot of Muslim teens who do opt to wear hijab, also, and some who don't. And I think sometimes it's almost like, well, if I do opt to wear hijab and I've got all these kind of pressures on me to not wear it or to look a certain way, that is going to create kind of a dissonance in what you want to do and then what's expected of you, and vice versa as well. Some people don't, and but then there's a pressure, and I think there's a lot of judgment, I think, in the community, and I think we need to kind of come away from that. And I think you're right, in terms of that generation gap. Sometimes I think a lot of parents, maybe through lack of knowledge, maybe through lack of kind of awareness, they place their expectations on their children without going through that process of teaching, of helping them learn, of understanding what makes their child tick. And I think that's a really important thing that we as a community also need to challenge. It's not just about individual therapy or working on the individual, but working on kind of families and kind of systems as well, because I think all of that is going to have an impact, on how the next generation come up.
Something that just sprang to my mind is the government in terms of the education and the agenda around sex and relationship education that's been kind of like imposed on various BME communities, and we don't know what to do as families, as parents. Our youngsters are being taught around SRE at a very, very early age, even in terms of primary age, not necessarily even getting to secondary school age. That in itself is a problem in society. We need to be able to openly talk about certain things that are a bit taboo when it comes to our youngsters. They're kind of like saying, whoa, our parents, the parents for these young children in this generation are saying, well, we want to push back. It's not acceptable. And then the younger generation, they may have a view on it. They might feel comfortable talking about it or not so, as the case may be. That is another area, I think, any kind of mental health support that's available for people, because it does affect, it plays on your mind. Am I something, is it something unnatural for me to talk about this?
And I think you're right. I think parents do need to kind of be a bit clued up. At the end of the day, every parent has a right to teach their children according to their faith or according to their kind of views. Now, if that child then goes and once it's reached maturity or whatever and has different opinions, okay, you know, that person's choice at that point. But I think, you know, as parents, you know, certainly up to a certain degree, you know, we have to think about, right, how much of our rights are being infringed upon, you know, by government policies, and like, you know, and I think sometimes it's difficult, you know, it's difficult to think about things like this because, you know, certainly from my background, like these kinds of things, we wouldn't talk about it. No. You know, you don't learn about relationships, you don't learn about what is consensual, what's not consensual, what's, you know, what's wrong and what's right. Nobody talks about these taboo subjects. And I think you've kind of hit something, you know, there that actually it's something that we as parents, you know, need to kind of
look. I think, you know, as a parent myself, I think something like this is a life skill at the end of the day. If we're not equipped to not only deal with the physical side of relationships, but the mental side of relationships, how do we cope? You know, we've got spiraling problems around divorce rates, marriages that are concocted in a matter of weeks and months, and then you're finding within a year marriages are breaking down. And also there's the financial burden placed upon parents and their children. You know, it's really has a detrimental effect on society, and then you get after the after effects of it when families crumble and when marriages disintegrate. The whole community's, you know, you're exposed, aren't you? You're literally like saying, "Oh, I only went to the wedding last month," or now I hear the two the boy and the girl in question. Well, they're no longer living together. I hear too many stories around these types of scenarios, and I'm thinking, you know, this is a big problem we have in our society, and it boils down to the root causes of some of this. It's about open communication and talking and sharing, and not being able to express your feelings around something, and wrong decisions are being made, and people's lives are ruined as a consequence.
I think if we as parents were not taking responsibility to talk about some of these things and teach our kids, you know, then they're going to learn it from somewhere, you know, and they're going to learn the wrong thing. Like, as in, like, you know, okay, if they're watching a lot of Hollywood or Bollywood or something, they're going to learn that, yes, you know, maybe marriages are not sustainable, or, you know, maybe it's more about, you know, just pursuing whoever you like or whoever you fancy, or they're going to learn it from Instagram, or, you know, whatever, you know, they're following. And I think we as parents, you know, if we want to raise responsible children, you know, responsible adults who know kind of the ins and outs and are responsible from the onset, then we have to be, you know, a big part of that, and we have to be willing to learn about and learn how to speak to our kids and communicate it, even if it brings up our own anxieties. Because I think sometimes it is, you know, I think as parents, you know, especially kind of third generation parents, I think we have our own, you know, barriers that we put up because we've learned those barriers. And, you know, but as people who have, you know, kind of been through maybe the education system, or just, you know, being exposed to more ideas and ways of doing things, I think we then have that responsibility to learn and change and implement what we've learned, and then see that change pan out in our kids. You know,
Andrew, you must have a few around this in terms of relationships and counselling people and supporting people. I think there's a lot of counselling that you can do in a preventative sense, not necessarily do it as a consequence of something going wrong. And then people seek your help.
Of course.
What about counselling people or actually coaching people?
Right.
We need to coach our youngsters. You're an advocate. Tanveen's an advocate for certain things. We all need to advocate certain things and be able to be there, not necessarily as role models, but somebody who has had some kind of experiences with relationships and seeing what can go wrong, what can go right. And it's like, you know, being a survivor of cancer, or have somebody who's a mental health sufferer and has got lived experience. We all have experiences to share, and I think sometimes we just sit back and think, oh, our youngsters, they don't want to listen to us, we're too grey in the tooth, we've got so much to offer them. But how is it that we impart that knowledge? How is it that we impart that experience?
So for me, the way that I work at it at the moment is about educating, and it's about educating the child, but also educating the parent as well. So I run a lot of workshops, and the workshops that I run, the titles that they have, people think that they're actually coming to maybe a vision board or a manifestation, or they're coming to a financial planning, but it actually takes it a little bit deeper than that. It's about working with them and working with their mindset, and also with the counselling that I do, or the coaching. I mean, I can give you an example of a client that I've worked with, and she's now in her 40s, she's not married, but her anxiety was around the fact that what is society thinking about the fact that she's not married? And that was eating away at her, even though she didn't want to be married. So it's about taking those coaching techniques and working through with her, and working out how high on the agenda is it for her to have anxiety around this. And just working through those processes and giving her a bit of work to do and take that home, she recognised that actually this is probably 5% of my issue. 95% of my issue is something completely different. So to me, it's really important to use coaching mechanisms, really important. And the younger that we can do that, the younger age that we can do that at, the better it is. And it's about running those specific workshops, but also working with the family, because it's important to educate the family as well as the child as well. So I'm a massive advocate of coaching, because I've seen the changes it can bring for people, but not just for adults. I've seen it for teenagers as well.
In a way, I think, sorry, you just hit a note for me there where, I just remembered that they're actually rolling out mindfulness for kids in schools.
Okay.
And I think that's such an amazing idea, because, children, they're constantly developing, and I think, they're learning how to deal with stress, how to deal with emotions. And I think, a lot of the time, especially in South Asian community, speaking from personal experience, you weren't really taught these things. You weren't taught, if you're angry or if you're upset, it's almost like, well, no, it doesn't matter. Like, stop it, just stop it. That's what you would get. You'd get a slap on the wrist and told to stop feeling. And I think that's such a detrimental part. It has such a detrimental impact on us as adults being able to process our feelings. So I think things like these, initiatives where children are being taught ways to kind of process their emotions, it's really, really important. And certainly kind of training up, parents, in our community to understand this is also really, really important as well. That our kids' emotional state is
Olivia
really
actually
important.
just dropped a comment, who just called last caller. She said children can't always talk to parents. So what do we do there?
And I think this is what we were talking about, weren't we, in terms of community leaders and having a space where they can talk. And maybe that's an initiative that the government could fund.
Maybe we need young community leaders, not necessarily family elders and the elder community. We need youngsters that are kind of like groomed into those particular positions, and that's the challenge, I think, in society.
I mean, that's what we're doing.
To bring young people forward.
That's what we're putting in an initiative at the Gurdwara that we're at as well, where we've understood that if it's someone who's of a certain generation, children are not going to listen to them. So let's have someone who's in between, has lived a little bit, but they can then speak to them, and then those particular people will have other people to speak to if they need to get some more advice. So it's about having that younger person that can relate, and that person that would understand what social media is and what all these things are. So it's about putting that in place.
Okay. So I think we are almost coming to the end of the show. So all I really wanted to say was we've covered an awful lot of ground. We've had a couple of people call in, so that's been really useful. And I just wanted to thank you both for coming into the studio to talk about something which is quite an interesting area of discussion. And we could talk at length. There's so many different things we could talk about. We didn't touch on, because, for example, we didn't touch on domestic violence, but I think there's room for discussion at another juncture. So I wanted to thank you both. Andrew Ahluwalia from Self Love and the founder of Food for All. Thank you for coming into the studio. Tanveen Chowdhury from Inspirited Minds, thank you very much for coming to the studio and sharing with us some of your concerns around community issues to do with mental health. So I appreciate both of you coming into the studio and giving us your valuable time. So
thank you for having us.
Thank you very much. All I wanted to say was, in terms of our show next week, we will have a GP and a pharmacist available, and we're going to be talking about primary care. And you can call in with your questions around GP access, how difficult it is to get appointments, what your experience is in GP surgeries. We will have an award-winning pharmacist, Jignesh Patel, who happens to be my personal pharmacist. He will be coming in and talking about what services pharmacies offer in terms of other services. There's also information around travel advice and Hajj preparation in terms of vaccination. So if you have any questions around that, feel free to call in next week on our community health show. This is Abdul Malik, your host. Thank you very much for calling in. Jazakallah khairan. After the break, we're going to be having the fundraiser for Minhaj Welfare Foundation. So do tune in and do participate. Jazakallah khairan. Thank you for listening. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
يا نبي سلام عليك يا رسول سلام عليك يا حبيب سلام عليك